right, welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the CBSI Hot 10 show. This is the list that I put together for not only my site, but also for comicbookinvest.com, where I'm going to run down the hot 10 books of this week. Hopefully you're enjoying this show as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. You keep telling your friends so we can keep growing this channel. And for those of you out there who haven't tried Whatnot yet, use my link down below and get yourselves a free $15 on your first purchase to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. No strings attached. You'll help out the channel by trying it out, and you get yourself something nice and get free $15. So really, what do you got to lose? And for those of you out there who got to go and get your supplies, your bags, your boards, your boxes, your top loaders, whatever you need to protect your collectibles, use my link to BCW down below, and also use my code RENA10 to get yourself 10% off, because it's stuff you got to buy anyway, so you might as well get a discount while you're at it. So save yourself 10% by using the code RENA10 right here. Now, with that all said, all we're going to do now is go through our little bit of an intro, and I'll be right back with this week's list.
Notable sales.
All right, our first book is a notable sale, and it is a classic, an indie classic that is 20 plus years old at this point. And it came out in 2003 after all, and I'm talking about The Walking Dead. You all remember The Walking Dead? I mean, the series is still kind of rolling with, side stories and spin-off shows, and we're getting the whole remastered, recolored version of the comic series released as well. But the original #1 sold this week in a CGC 9.9. That's right, a 9.9 sold this week for $18,000. And while I know that's a lot of money, it's actually down from the last sale, which was $23,459 back in August. Granted, when you look over the last couple of years in a 9.9, it doesn't sell all that often, but it generally was selling in the 13 to 16 range. So 18 is still a nice jump up from then. But if you just look at the last sale, it looks like a big dip. But both of them are a pretty decent increase selling in 2024 for this book in a grade that is pretty limited. I mean, it's a 9.9 after all. There's not a ton of those in the census if you want to go and take a look. Now, also of interest this week, we had Mark Spears on the show on Wednesday on the Tax Show, and he was telling us about this mole variant for his second print that people were selling out there. And I was like, what's Mark talking about? And then I saw it. Yeah, apparently this small printer error, I mean, that's all it is. It's a defect. It's a printer defect. Now, that's not to say that we haven't seen these things sell before. I mean, you know, that Fantastic Four book, and then Secret Wars, where Galactus is more blue than purple, etc. Hey, it's happened before. But just be mindful of that this is a defect. This is not a planned variant. This is not a secret variant that was released or planned. This is just a defect in the printing process for a few of the covers. So this mole variant sold this week for a whopping amount, considering the second print's doing well as it is, but it's generally selling in maybe 10 to 15 bucks at best right now. And then you got the 1 at 25, which is also doing very well in the second print. But this mole variant that has sold, one of them actually sold at auction for $202.50, which is a hell of a premium above that $10 to $15 I just mentioned, just because of this defect here. Granted, the one auction that I saw that sold only had 2 bids, and the winner had 0 feedback. Now, not calling shenanigans, but I'm just pointing it out that that's what's there. And then since that auction, there are a lot of listings now asking for a lot of big bucks, but they're not actually selling. So I'm not sure if the market is going to be buying in on this mole variant for very long. But hey, who knows? Stranger things has happened. But I did want to bring this up because this was an outlier sale. So it is notable for that aspect alone, that it's an outlier and it should be, scrutinized a little bit. And just be careful with what you do with your wallet. And again, we talked to Mark. This is not a planned thing. This is just a printer defect. So keep that in mind as well. And just to give you a bit of a better look at it here, like, see, you can zoom in there. It's just almost like a smudge. But it is what it is. Now, with that said, those were our notable sales for the week. So let's just get into the main list right now.
Number 10.
Coming in new this week, Psylocke #1. This is the art germ cover on the 1 in 100 incentive ratio for this book. There are a few variant covers for this, including a trade dress version of this, which is also fine if you just want to get this, with the trade dress. But the 1 in 100 is the one that seems to be selling at a bit of a premium this week. Granted, not a ton of volume on this, but considering when you compare this to its peers and other 1 in 100s out the last few weeks, and this week included, like that Deadpool 8, and then you've got some of the X-Men books as well, a lot of those have been coming out of the gate under ratio, whereas this one, it's averaging above at 115 with a high of 130 so far. Granted, it is only a few amount of sales. It's a half dozen amount of sales, but it's only been 2 days that it's been released. I'm not looking at the pre-sales, that were sold back in August and September, etc. Too long ago, not relevant today. I'm just looking at what sold the past 7 days. So when you base it off of that, it is interesting that it is above the ratio mark to start. We'll see if it maintains. We'll see if it rises or what it does for next week. But for now, it earned a spot right there at the bottom of the list in my eyes. So that's why it's here at number 10. But with that all said, let's take a look at what we do have next.
Number 9.
Coming in next at number 9, we do have Mark Spears' Monsters #1 back on the list. And no, it is not just because he popped in on our show the other day. It's because this book has been sneaky. This has been a sneaky book. We've had this on the list and various covers of it on the list the last few weeks, the last month or so. But this cover A has quietly been kind of consistently selling in the background while the second prints have come out, the second print incentives, etc. But like I said, the cover A is kind of snuck up to this average of $40 so far. And there was even a CGC 9.8 that sold for this for $150. So whereas this came onto the list maybe a month ago at $20 a cover, and then we saw the other covers kind of rise up to that tide and everything was selling for about $20. Apart from the bride cover. The bride cover has been far and away the most expensive of the group, but the cover A, it's catching up. $40 average with a couple of $50 and $60 sales mixed in. It's still one to watch and one to keep an eye on. So with that, issue 2 is coming later this month. I think a third print is also on the way. So more monsters coming. It's not stopping anytime soon. Now, with that, let's get it moving to our next book. And coming in at number 8.
Number 8.
So a lot of Marvel news the last month or so with D23 happening down in Brazil. We've got some trailers, we got some sneak peeks, we got some new posters, we got some promo images, and we got some interviews where, some of the creators were telling stories of, yes, Punisher. Punisher, we know, is going to be in the Daredevil Born Again show, which is coming just in March. It's only a few months away. But there are more plans for the Punisher following that series. So we've seen a little bit of a bump in this book, which features their first crossover since it's coming in March. And it's doing pretty well. So this is Daredevil 183 from Frank Miller. Granted, volumes are starting to tick up a little bit, averaging on this book about $20 to $25 in that kind of very fine mid to higher grade copies are going for that. There are outliers in both directions where you can find some beat copies that are only like $5 to $10, and then you can find some very nice near minty copies where they're selling for like $65. So again, that's why our average is where it is, kind of there in the middle. Newsstand 9.8, mind you, sold this week for $400, which is double what the 9.8 directs were selling last week. Last week, there was no directs that sold this week. So last week, a couple of 9.8 sold for about $200. This week, a newsstand sold for $400, which is a huge premium for a newsstand for a book from 1983. Now, I know a lot of people are under the impression that newsstands are always more rare and more valuable, but that's not the case. You got to look back through the years. It goes the other way. It goes the other way. There's a point, I don't remember off the top of my head, in the 80s where the dynamic shifts and newsstands are more prevalent than direct editions, because direct editions were comic shops, which only started in like that time frame. So there were more newsstands, people selling at the corner stores and the 7-Elevens and supermarkets. There were more of those newsstands than there were comic book shops. So just be mindful of that and be careful when you're paying a premium from those. I know all the arguments over, well, it's a newsstand, they got beat up on the shelf, I get all that, but with people pressing today, you can make anything look pretty these days. So just keep that in mind. And with that said, let's take a look at what we got at lucky number 7.
Number 7.
And at number 7, we have another return to the list, another sneaky book. This is Absolute Wonder Woman #1, the Dan Panosian 1 in 25 incentive variant. Now, while Absolute Wonder Woman is still selling very well, as is Absolute Batman #1, the cover A's are both doing pretty solid. I mean, Batman's doing maybe 20 to 25, where Absolute Wonder Woman is more 10 to 15. However, the 1 in 25 Dan Panosian is quietly creeping up. This is the 1 in 25 incentive, and we had it on the list a few weeks ago, and it was averaging like $40. Now it's averaging $55 on a couple dozen sales, and this hit a high of 65. So just one to watch. It is a gorgeous cover. I love this cover. I'm a biased, I'm a Dan Panosian fan though, so I'm a little bit biased, but I do really like this cover, and it is my favorite of the Absolute Wonder Woman bunch of covers. And I'm looking forward to issue 2 because so far, this is my favorite Absolute title, to be honest. Just saying. And with that said, let's keep this thing rolling and see what we got next.
Number 6.
So in at number 6, we have this Tales of the Bazaar #9. This was on the outside looking in last week because there was only one sale. Granted, it was for like $53, but there was only one sale, so it didn't really garner a spot on the main list. But since then, we've seen a few more sales. Yes, this is Tales of the Bazaar #9. We've seen a couple sales on issues 8 and 7, and there's a lot of questions over, is this AI art? Is this not? Who is Zaf? I get it. I don't know. All I know is I like this cover. It's a nice cover. It harkens back to those old horror movies of the 80s. This is like a, Camp Crystal Lake. I feel like she's hitching a ride to. Pretty cool. I like it. I like the vibe of it. I get it. That said, since last week's single sale, we've seen about a dozen sold more than that, averaging about $40, hitting a high of 60, which for a new release book, like this book just came out last week, and its cover price is only like $7 or $6 or $7 or something like that. That's a huge premium right out the gate for a book like this. Granted, I understand it is very hard to find. Not every comic shop carries this from this publisher, but just saying, it is a huge jump, and we did see a bit of volume, which is why it comes in at number 6 this week. But with that said, that was the bottom half of our list. Now let's take a look at what the top half has to offer us.
Number 5.
And we've got Star Wars back. How long has it been since we've had a Star Wars book on the list? It feels like it's been forever. But with the news that we are getting more Daisy Ridley as Rey. Yes, we knew Rey was supposed to have a movie. But now the talk is, and the rumor mill is kind of pushing out, that she might be a main feature in a new trilogy of movies. Not just a single, but a trilogy of movies. And maybe this is episodes, 10, 11, and 12, and not just a brand new trilogy. A lot of rumors going on right now, but those rumors are driving this book, The Force Awakens #1, back to prominence, and people are starting to pick it up again. So the past week or so, we've seen a surge in sales. And when I say a surge, last week there was one sale. There was a single sale of Force Awakens last week. Meanwhile, this week, seen a couple dozen, like over 20 sales, averaging that $15 to $20. That's kind of where it's been. It's been up and down. We've seen it for cheaper. We've seen it for a little bit higher, but right in that kind of $15 to $20 range is where this is kind of moving. CGC 9.8 sold for $150 this week. So something to keep an eye on, especially as we get more concrete information as to what's planned. But the rumor was enough to move this book this week. So this came in at our number 5 spot. Now, that's going to take us to our next book.
Number 4.
And at number 4, I told you the Absolute corner of the DC universe is still selling very well. Now, Absolute Superman is the newest title. This only came out last week. And meanwhile, the cover A and the regular variants, those are only doing basically cover still. Volumes are pretty high, but they're not really selling at a premium yet. And most of the variants are selling at or under ratio, except for this Jim Lee 1 in 100, which is outpacing most of the other books. This is performing very much like the Absolute Batman and the Absolute Wonder Woman 1 in 100s have, but maybe even a little bit better. Again, this only came out last Wednesday, so we're looking at maybe 9-10 days total worth of sales. But over the last 7 days, we saw about 20 sales, averaging $155 a piece for this 1 in 100, with a high sale hitting $200. So hitting double ratio, averaging $150. This has been a solid mover for Superman. So one to keep an eye on. Is this it? Is this enough? I don't know if the ceiling's been hit yet, but this is the one that's kind of standing out from the pack as the cover and the Absolute Superman book that people are putting those extra dollars into, as opposed to the regular so far. Who knows what'll happen in the weeks ahead, but this is the last 7 days worth of info. Now, with that, we still have our top 3, so let's see what we got.
Number 3.
So, coming in at number 3, we have Captain America 230. Why, do you ask, is this selling? Because they released a new poster, and it actually homages this cover pretty well. Granted, it's a red Hulk fist, and it's a Sam Wilson cap, but it's Hulk punching a cap shield. Very reminiscent of this cover, so it's reminding a lot of folks about this classic cover, and they are going out and they are picking it up. Again, this is Captain America 230, Ron Wilson cover. 30 plus sales on this thing. It's averaging over $30. I want to say it's like 30 to 40 depending on the grade. Now, at the most recent sale prices, it's kind of crept up over the last week or so, where they might have started in that more $10 to $15 range, but now we're hitting more of those 30 to 40s. And a CGC 9.8 of this book sold for $500. $500 for a 9.8 of this book. That is a big sale and a big number. And again, I get it. It's a cool cover, but how long has it been since we've seen a movie poster start to move comics? Feels like it's been forever. But hey, it's fun to see. It makes the hobby fun. It makes collecting fun, because I'm sure we can go out there and go digging for this book, and you can find some old Cap back issues and see if we can find this one when you go hit your shop this weekend. But with that said, we still got 2 books left, so let's see what we got for our top 2.
Number 2.
Just when I think the ceiling has been hit, this book keeps surprising me. I just can't believe it. Emily the Strange, issue 1. This thing keeps climbing up, and it's climbed up the charts as well as with the prices that it's selling for. As last week we had it at 3, I think initially it was coming in at number 4. Does it have the gusto to get to number 1 next week? I don't know, but if it keeps going up at this kind of increment, we might have to consider it. But Emily the Strange number 1 this past week, while volumes may be low, there's still not a lot of copies listed. So it makes sense that there's not a lot of copies moving, but the copies that are moving, they're averaging $140 at this point, with a high sale for a raw book of $250. $250 high, averaging $140. This, again, I don't know where the ceiling is at this point. I thought it was down there when this hit like $100. I thought that was it, but no, it's outpaced that by far. So we'll see if this keeps moving in that direction, or if we finally hit that ceiling on Emily the Strange. But with these prices, it just can't be ignored, and it just keeps climbing up the rankings on the list. But with that all said, we've got 1 book left, so let's see what we got coming in at our number 1.
And our number 1.
Hot off the press of new news today, Brian K. Vaughan is going to be adapting a reboot of the Forbidden Planet series. Yes, classic sci-fi action. We're going to be getting it from Brian K. Vaughan, who is a very, very talented writer. But the news just dropped this morning, and already we're seeing huge movement on this book. This is an Innovation comic. You remember Innovation? I think they did like those Freddy Krueger books way, way back in the day. But this is Forbidden Planet number 1. Yes, there was a comic book. It was in the 90s. You can go out there digging for it and see if you get lucky, because already at last count, and this was, I think I did my last dip of research in around 6 p.m. on Friday, there was more than 40 sales already, with sales still coming in as new copies are being listed on the hour, it seems. But 40 plus sales already just today. Again, this is not even for the full week. That's just today, hitting highs of $30. They started in at like $2, the $2 sales, then 10s and 12s. There's still 10s and 12s and 15s hitting and selling. But then we have our $25 and $30 outliers. There was even a CGC sold for $105. Meanwhile, new listings, as I said, keep dropping as the day goes on. Now the new listings are asking like $50 for raw copies, and they're asking $355 on my comic shop for a 9.8. Just the surge in prices and movement on this book has been more than I would have guessed for a simple announcement that Brian K. Vaughan is going to be adapting this. I'm not even sure if it's going to be a movie or a TV series at this point. I don't even know if it was that clear in the announcement, but man, this thing has been rolling today. So it just snatched that top spot away from everybody else. Now, with that all said, that's the list for this week. Make sure you guys stick around and check out the Qualified, which will be starting up immediately after I'm done here. The boys are going to be covering the hot ratios of 2024. Maybe some of the books we covered here on the list that found their way back on there again. I don't know what the boys are going to cover, but stick around and check out what they got for you. Come back, check out all of the stuff we have here on the channel, including Saturday Night Special tomorrow night, Tales from the Dark Side on Sunday for all your Star Wars news and comics, etc. And then next week, I'll hit you up with another Wednesday watch list and give you a heads up on all the new books coming out next Wednesday and all the other content we have here on the channel. And with that all said, I'll see you all soon with some more content. All right, later.